Hello everybody, welcome to the West Ham Way YouTube channel. It's Corey and this is a tactical breakdown for Crystal Palace versus West Ham United. Of course we're playing tomorrow. You would have seen a predicted 11 and score prediction video. This is a new feature going forward. I'm taking all that tactical stuff out of it a little bit, just giving you the teams and then focusing on the way that Crystal Palace are going to play in possession in the attacking third in terms of a defensive shape, key players, key battles, and how West Ham can try and beat the opposition. So let's get straight into things. Make sure you like the video as well. Make sure you subscribe if you're new to the West Ham Way YouTube channel. Let's start with Crystal Palace in their defensive shape. As you'll see, Eberechi Eze and Townsend almost covering those widths and allowing that back four to tuck in. You'll see that is very narrow and will be the case tomorrow. I imagine Milivojevic and McCarthur both playing in deep lying midfield roles to protect the back four. Again, this means it's incredibly hard for West Ham, even in a press, to push up and try and get them beyond. Interestingly enough, as I said in the preview, with someone like a Tyreek Mitchell, probably won't tuck in as much because his athleticism means that he can push. It means Eze possibly has got a little bit of freedom on transition. Again, this is why West Ham, in a way, shouldn't be fearful of Palace, particularly when pressing against them, and particularly in fear of the counter, because they play in such a deep central position and they take their wingers out of the game in terms of that transition that they're not really primed to go and press. The midfielders, again, they lack the athleticism to go and push up against West Ham. And even if they win the ball in turnover, it's highly unlikely that they'll be able to press as a team incredibly quickly. The ball carry won't be massively effective. It will leave the likes of Zaha and Eze to try and make up ground and force Crystal Palace to exploit the space and hit West Ham. But it's highly unlikely that's going to happen, particularly with the way we play. As you can see, it is going to be difficult for West Ham to try and break down a back four that sits incredibly central, incredibly deep as well. And the protection from the two pivots, again, is to stop teams trying to break down a back four that at times lacks a little bit of mobility. The obvious sort of weakness of this is, again, if West Ham can try and break those wide areas in Eze and Townsend, get them beyond, and of course naturally force that back four out of shape and commit bodies forward. So again, as you can see, West Ham have to be, they have to take risks in this game. I feel like, when you watched us against Palace last time, particularly with Soufal, when he got on that right-hand side and in beyond, albeit the ball was slightly behind Allaire, the back four was shifted. It was out of shape. It's easy to play, for Palace to have the ball in front of them because they'll sit in a very nice, organised shape. So it'll be interesting to see how West Ham can try and break that down. Let's get on to Crystal Palace in terms of their general possession and how they're going to play tomorrow. Again, like you can see, Eze Townsend making those inverted runs, coming in central. You see, particularly with the two centre midfielders, again, sitting deep. They won't commit the two fullbacks forward. And you've got Wilfred Zaha there on the left-hand side. And obviously, you can see by the arrows, he's willing to drop into those deep areas, carry the ball, pick it up, and then try to interchange play with Eberechi Eze. And of course, that can leave the striker, who normally plays in a central position, quite isolated. The interesting thing about this, and you see it again with Eze and both Zaha, is the fact that they are very, very close to each other. When you added Van Aanholt to that, it created width. It allowed them to come central and create overloads in those wide areas. I'm not expecting to see that too much tomorrow because I'm not convinced that they're going to commit Mitchell forward as much as possibly they would have committed Van Aanholt, just because of the nature of the player. It gives them a little bit of solidity. It means that they're not really fearing that counter-attack. But expect Zaha to drop into deep pockets, try and pick the ball up. Again, like you see with the position of the two centre midfielders, incredibly functional. They will only try, their job really is to protect that back four, particularly with the two centre backs. They'll only press as high as the line will go. And of course, that means that Eze and Townsend and Zaha have to come central to link up play and create something in the final third. So, Palace are non-committal in terms of possession, but you have to watch out for that left-hand side because they will try and link up play. They did get a lot of success in the first game as well, particularly down that left-hand side, and it forced West Ham back at times. So again, I think if West Ham are brave in the press, we can push them back, push Zaha and Eze into deep areas. And as you can see, you're taking Eze out of the game from an offensive position. He's he's trying to cover that width. And when he's got that role, you're stopping that ball carrying, you're stopping Palace pushing up, and you're preventing that link up with Wilfred Zaha. And it will put pressure on Zaha to carry the ball on his own. So you can see sort of little tendencies about how West Ham can try and get into this game and try and nullify Crystal Palace. Interestingly enough, I pulled up a little bit of a tactics board in terms of Palace in the final third. And this does really depend on how much possession Crystal Palace will have. Now, obviously, they concede a lot of possession because they want to keep that shape. But I think you've seen some games when they can get on the ball. Of course, naturally, they do try and push their line up a bit higher. They will try and invite the fullbacks to get into the game, particularly with the inverted runs. It can create overloads in the box. It allows the width. It can get deliveries from those wide areas if you push up Ward and if you push up Mitchell. Now, Obviously, those two players are quite conservative in terms of their overlapping runs. And also, you wouldn't really expect Palace's fullbacks to try and stretch West Ham in behind. It will really come from the movement of almost the inverted left midfielder, right midfielder, Zaha and Andre Ayew in creating those overloads. So again, I think I can't expect Palace to play in this system and in this shape too often. You see Zaha there playing in a central role as well. We're going to link up with somebody like an Andre Ayew, and you've got Eberechi Eze as well, coming from deep areas, as well as Andros Townsend. And Townsend and Eze can make those runs in beyond or to the back post. It does mean if someone like a Mitchell can get in beyond on the left-hand side, Townsend will make a far post run. Equally, if someone like Ward gets in beyond, you've got Eze making that run. They are willing runners. And I think whilst you can sit there and say that Palace aren't going to hurt West Ham necessarily from open play, or it might be quite difficult, particularly when we're in the shape, there is a possibility that if they're able to dominate possession or West Ham concede possession, that they obviously will commit men forward, and they're happy to invert their wingers to add a bit more of an attacking threat. So be wary of it. I doubt we'll see it tomorrow. If I'm perfectly honest, I think West Ham's defensive shape is more than good enough to deal with it. In terms of attacking tendencies, I touched on this earlier as well. You've obviously got this left-hand side, and I've sort of identified Bowen, Soufal and Rice sitting in those positions, particularly on the left. Again, you can see that Soufal really is going to come up against someone like a Zaha pushing on. You feel that if you can push maybe Tyrick Mitchell back, that it's preventing that overlap and preventing Palace getting a domination in possession and pushing forward the two centre midfielders. Again, it is a job clearly for someone like a Declan Rice to try and deal with the likes of Eze dropping in deep areas. I've also highlighted Zaha playing a bit wider. He can come a bit central. He will try and link up with the likes of Eze. So again, I think West Ham's back four has to be disciplined. And equally, I'll explain how if West Ham's back four and the team as a whole push up, that we can create chances against Crystal Palace. But you can see clearly there's left-sided tendencies massively. And also you can see these sort of the nearer to the centre of the screen, you've got Townsend as well creating almost an attacking too. And clearly, you know, Roy Hodgson has a real emphasis on, whilst he can give Wilfred Zaha that little bit of fluidity in picking up positions, again, he needs really two attackers in the box if they can get in beyond. And that's why you see Townsend come central. Equally, Eze can try and make that run if it's coming from the right-hand side. So again, there is a commitment to two strikers. It obviously is to create space, to create numbers in the box. And if someone like a Zaha can get in beyond, or you can get a delivery from the right-hand side, then there is numbers to capitalise on that. So I think while people talk about Palace as a defensive team, and yes, they can see possession, and yes, of course, defence is the first form of attack in some aspects. I think they're functional. Once they get into that final third, they are committed to try and create chances. And I think they're improving in that aspect. They've introduced Mateta. Again, like I say, you know, that gives them a different element because he can run from deep as well. He's got the pace. He can transition quickly with Wilfred Zaha, a different sort of type of striker to the likes of keep saying Andre, man. It's Jordan Ayew. Didn't play for West Ham. And Christian Benteke to stay a bit central and takes them out of the game. So I think Roy Hodgson is looking to develop a side that can counter-attack effectively and commit numbers forward. But I expect them to play that if they can pin back West Ham at times, if West Ham are a little bit conservative in terms of their overall shape. Now, the crux of the video, how can West Ham beat Crystal Palace compared to last time? So, as you'll see here, I think it's about trying to push the fullbacks forward. And I know there is an element of risk, particularly with the likes of Soufal and Aaron Creswell. Probably more so Aaron Creswell, because you feel like he can get hit on the transition. As far as I'm concerned, this is all about West Ham pressing Palace as a side. You have to remember that Palace will move forward as a team and sit as a team. There is no commitment. The only player that really has freedom is Wilfred Zaha, and he is there for the outlet. And yes, of course, he can transition and pick the ball up, but you feel like particularly in deep areas, I think West Ham, particularly with the two centre-backs, particularly with the two pivots in front, even when they're pressing, it's enough to deal with Wilfred Zaha. Jordan Ayew isn't going to try and play in beyond or try and get in beyond the centre-backs and the two pivots because he doesn't have that pace. He'll try and hold the ball up and introduce Wilfred Zaha. So again, I think West Ham, although it seems like a bit of a risk in terms of pushing forward, you have to look at the personnel and say that I'm not massively convinced that will happen. I've identified as well Jared Bowen, and I think Bowen, again, will come central naturally. That is his tendency on his left foot, but I think he can get in beyond Tyrick Mitchell. If he does get in beyond, of course, naturally, you can stretch that back four a little bit and you can create space, and you back Mickey to try and get in beyond and play on the shoulder, as we've seen in previous games. So I think I'd like to see him in wider areas, or Soufal pressing up and pushing back. Interestingly enough as well with this, you see Eze against Soufal and Creswell against Townsend. You know, the way Hodgson plays with the wingers, he's not asking them necessarily to go and press and beat the ball. He's asking them to cover wide spaces. So if West Ham can force the issue a little bit in terms of the fullback areas and take a little bit of risk, they will try and sit back a little bit. You've also got players as well in terms of that attacking midfield three, Pablo Fornals, to try and pick up areas and take on the men. You'd feel that if someone like a Creswell can force back Townsend, and again, I know Fornals isn't necessarily the man to get in beyond, but certainly I think there can be space created in behind and possibly deliveries. I think crucially as well, and particularly when Palace are in their defensive shape, you've obviously got the red marker there, which I haven't labelled, but is Said Benrahma trying to play in between McCarthur and Milivojevic. It's difficult. They try and narrow the play. They'll try and press, but by pushing Rice and Souček up a little bit further and asking one of them to press, it will give room to Said Benrahma. I think at times in the first game, we were a bit frustrated. Benrahma's coming a bit deep. And we couldn't really create anything. And I think the reason why he played on that left-hand side in the second half instead of Fornals, because he can stretch the play, because he could get him beyond, because he was asking questions of Ward. And you see Ward there is tucked in central. Again, I think if someone can get him behind, you're forcing Ward out of position. And of course, naturally, it can allow an auxiliary run from somebody like a Thomas Souček. So again, I'm not saying it's easy to break down Crystal Palace. I think, in fact, they're probably one of the best organised sides in terms of their fundamentals and in terms of their positioning. I know, forget the Liverpool game, because I know they got caught in transition and Liverpool were absolutely fantastic and drew them out. And they had players that can play in three roles to do so. West Ham won't necessarily. We are a very functional side. I'm interested to see how Mickey plays in this game. You can see him there as the red marker. He has to try and get him beyond both Scott Dann and Cahill. It's not easy. And again, I think it's difficult for West Ham to play through the lines. I'd like Said Benrahma to get on the ball in those pockets between the midfield and defence, not because I think he can necessarily play a pass through the two centre-backs and that kind of low block and that central shape of the defence, but because I think he's going to try and ask questions of them to force them out. Once you beat that foil of McCarthur and Milivojevic, you're then asking those two defenders to try and chase the ball. Then, unless it gives an opportunity for someone like a Said Benrahma to hit the ball from the edge of the box and get a shot off. And I think he's gearing up towards that type of play. He's been a little bit more decisive. The crucial thing is, obviously, if we can break the lines, particularly the fullbacks, and get Mickey in beyond, I think we've got a real problem here for them. I think if you can commit Bowen forward, Souček forward at times, take risks, particularly knowing that the two defensive midfielders for Crystal Palace aren't going to press forward, don't have the athleticism necessarily to carry the ball and hurt West Ham very, very quickly, you'd feel that we could get a chance, we could find some space, and we could get that crucial goal. I don't think it's going to be a game of goals. I did say 2-0 in the predicted 11 video. The reason for that is, you have to try and break a side like Palace down, but I feel like we learnt our lesson a little bit in that first game. I feel like the first half wasn't good enough. We sat back, we allowed them to have the ball, we allowed them to press, and listen, I'm not saying they're not massively impressive in an attacking sense, but if you give Palace possession of the ball and allow them to come onto you, they will get deliveries into the box. They have got players that can hurt you even from deep areas. So again, I wouldn't encourage West Ham to do that. This game has to be about West Ham taking the front foot, being brave enough to take the front foot, and understanding the personnel that Crystal Palace have got. We'll play midfields, particularly against Liverpool, with raw athleticism, with the ability to drag that ball forward, possibly the passing range as well to hit in the wide areas. That's a different ball game. But you'd feel like if particularly West Ham in a 4-2-3-1 can pin back Crystal Palace, play between the lines, and use, particularly with the likes of Jarrod Bowen, to get him beyond, Mickey playing on the shoulder as he did against Burnley and West Brom to get those goals, we can get a goal. Is it going to be a comfortable afternoon, evening? Probably not. We're probably going to be sitting here tearing our hair out going, oh my God, this is taking ages. But we have to be patient. We have to be patient. This is a pragmatic side. I know they lost 4-0 to Manchester City, who are a fantastic team. They got a draw against Arsenal. What it tells you is that if you can draw them out of position, you look at Manchester City, particularly with the 2-8s and the false 9, and you're drawing them out and playing in behind and hitting them from set pieces and dragging them out of that structure, you will get chances. But we have to be patient, and we have to, of course, take the risk and try and dominate the possession. I know it's not what Moyes advocates for particularly early in the season, but I think West Ham, this is the way we can try and beat Crystal Palace. But they are a good team, and a good result of 3 points against them is a really decent result moving forward. So thank you so much for joining me. Like the video, make sure you subscribe if you're new to the West Ham YouTube channel. The watch along will be live probably, like I say, when this goes out, it'll go out tonight, so it'll be out tomorrow 5:30. Join us there, line up, build up, live match commentary, all the usual suspects, and then hopefully we'll see West Ham climb up that table before a massive game on Sunday. You get all your fans' voices and your predicted 11s and your transfer videos as well. But until then, hopefully we get the result, and take care.